Here we go. All right, so this presentation today, I'm going to get over here on this side, is just about teaching composition for the English 101 classroom, and I'm going to talk about it specifically in the context of transitioning our high school students to the college freshman English, because especially you where you teach AP English, I think that's what you could use. So first of all, for our audience, tell me name and what you teach.
My name is Tina Bullington. I teach sophomores and seniors. This semester I have 3 senior classes. I have Standard, I have EC Inclusion, and AP Literature.
And the AP is the one that we really want to help you out with. All right, so today our objectives are we're going to review some of the research that's been done on this throughout time. I've actually got a couple of sources that are a little bit dated, but I did that on purpose because I want us to talk a little bit about how writing has changed and teaching it in the classroom. Then we'll discuss a couple of classroom scenarios, one of my own, one that's been researched, maybe one of yours, things like that. And then you'll have the opportunity to explore resources that can be used for your classroom. And I really think you're going to like the resources that I have.
Okay.
So the first thing I've got here, and I will say too, I'm trying to model things I would have my students do as far as writing goes, like my citation right here, as I go through as well. So that would be something I would do. So this source talks about writing from the early stage. It focused a lot on journals and how the kids use them, and then how you transition that through to high school. And ultimately, the consensus of the whole article, even up to adults, as it mentions here, is that it allows you to create relationships and ultimately communicate. That's our big word there, is communicate. Because I think what's happened is a lot of people have forgotten that that's what writing is for. And so the biggest thing is when we read, we write about it to communicate what it's about, what's it analyzing, things like that. In the same way, we write so that others can read it. And again, it's all about communication. The same thing goes along with this source, talking about task interpretation. How, when you set a prompt before a group of students, how they interpret it. Are they going to give you the standard response? Or are they going to take it and really just run with it? Like one of your students that you mentioned to me, she's really good about communicating how things made her feel. Yes. So ultimately, the overall conclusion is that teaching writing in the classroom has changed because of the development of technology. A lot of times now we type as opposed to handwrite, or we text. It's a lot more efficient now. They can write more quickly. But the end game has not changed. The need to communicate is still the same. And again, what we need to do is remind our students first and foremost in both the English high school classroom and the freshman 101, moving from top of the ladder to bottom again, that that's what you are trying to do, is communicate. So from that same source, and I'm sorry this is so small, normally I wouldn't have this much on the slide, but from that same source we have this scenario where they posed a prompt about what you would do on a rainy day in a freshman English course. And what this basically talks about is the group of people that got together to analyze these essays said that these students were so bound in a box by standard format that they didn't really tell you, how would you overcome this problem? How would you do this? How would you do that? And a lot of the people within those groups had trouble with that. And then across the way, they did the same thing, and they saw less of that. And there's this quote here at the bottom. It says, at this point, the student, or whoever they were looking at, is in a perfect position to speculate, to move from the problem question to an analysis of the problem. However, we get neither a technical discussion nor an academic discussion, but a lesson on life. So ultimately, because of that standardized box, it's like students don't know how to get out of that and say, this is the problem, this is how you solve it. Because writing's been presented as a standard, not a problem-solving or communicating tool. Yes,
Can I say something? I'm getting children that are coming from AP language. And in AP language, they are writing specifically about the writing.
Mm-hmm.
And so their writing is very formulaic. It's like they give a quote and then they say, this is an example of an idiom. This idiom is used by the author to do this. And that's the end of it. I want them to talk about the work as a whole and understand theme and be able to explain why did the author choose to use an idiom? How does it tie to the whole work? And that's something they are having trouble with because they've been trained to write so technically that there is no breakdown of the text as a whole. They can't go to whole because they're so focused on one small things. Yeah, and it's formulaic. It is.
And all that goes back to...
It's good for them.
Yes.
But I'm having an issue with getting them to be more broad.
And what I have found is what that goes back to, and this is what made me think of you, is the fact that it's them not knowing how to adapt to the problem set before them. They don't know how to take what was the problem there and now transition it. How do I apply it to the problem here?
They are having trouble with it.
So this was one scenario. This was a researched scenario. And this would help you focus on the AP kids. I'm now going to present a scenario from my own classroom of how I teach writing mostly to my standard and my EC students, because that is the group I teach most primarily. I've got an honors group right now, and they're not really seeing this as much. I'm going through it quickly, but
it doesn't hurt to review it either.
Right, exactly. But I teach this listed writing method. For them, it's a to-do list. And for my standard and my EC kids, this helps take them back to the problem solving, the list of problems they have to solve in order to complete the essay. For them, this seems to work. And for my kids who struggle the most, they can fit it into that formula and do well and then be on their merry way.
I take this and put it into like a flow map or a thinking map.
Yes, a graphic organizer.
That's what I do.
Yes.
That's for my EC kids. For my standard kids, not so much. For my AP kids, no.
They don't need this necessarily.
No, they don't need this.
I do the same thing with a different kind of graphic organizer. I teach them several different ways to do this, but we start with this because it's a to-do list. Mm-hmm. It's a list of problems to solve to get there. So I found this to be extremely effective with my standard and my EC students because they either just need to do it and kind of move on their merry way, or they need to know how to problem solve and apply that to a job or apply that to the military or whatever it is that they need to do. But with your AP kids, they don't need this as much. They need to learn how to talk about it. And so my next thing then, you've kind of already started on it, is tell me about an experience that you've had with that AP group that would show contrast there.
That's the problem. The problem is I gave them an essay in class, their first essay, and it wanted to know how the author used imagery to develop the theme for the text. And although they wrote beautifully and eloquently about imagery, and they gave me a lot of wonderful examples, they cited them in perfect MLA format, their opening paragraph does not answer the prompt. It does say that the author of whatever the text was uses imagery to discuss, to show the theme, but they don't tell what the theme is. Mm-hmm. So they failed miserably at it, and we try to talk about how the first thing they have to do in AP literature is decide, well, what is the message? What is the purpose of this work?
Right.
And then go back to their roots of idioms, imagery, any kind of figurative language that's being used. That's what they're having an issue with. And so what we've been doing, like over the last night, their job, I gave them a new prompt that was similar to the first one they did. And I told them all I want is an opening paragraph. And I actually have a peer edit form that they're going to do on Monday. Mm-hmm. And I had them write, instead of their name on their paper, I had them write their favorite author, first and last name. So no one will know whose paper is who.
Right.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to take them up and redistribute. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give them the peer review form. There's a front and a back because they're going to do 2. You're
Yeah.
going to pick them up again, shift them around, hand them out. And it has specific questions like, did you restate the work and the author? Another thing that they're so used to, they're wanting to give a hook for every single essay. And the problem is this, in an AP literature exam, they're not always going to be necessary.
No.
They're not always going to have a hook. If you can answer the question, restate the work, the author, and answer the question without going into further detail, the opening paragraph, they will be fine.
But that goes back to the formula that they're trying to fit it into, whereas that kind of writing doesn't necessarily.
Well, I'm hoping that this will benefit them. So I'm hoping it does, because we've talked about it enough, and now I want to see. I didn't want them to write the entire paper. I said I want you just to have an opening paragraph.
Set your thoughts up.
Yes, and we did talk about how. Listen, we actually sat down and broke down what the question was asking, and the question was on infancy, and it was wanting to know, it was 2 poems, and it wanted to know how the author, I used imagery again because I wanted to find another prompt that was as similar as possible. It said, how do the authors of the following poems use imagery to develop their ideas about infancy? So then each poem has a different idea about infancy. And so they had to read and analyze and come up with, Blake is saying this, Longfellow is saying this, they had to do that kind of thing. So first we decoded them, and I'm hoping that when we sit down on Monday, it'll be a little bit better.
Yeah. And there again, it's just about you set the question up so that they have to solve the problem of how do they create that idea.
Right.
So
I'm hoping chunking it, doing the opening paragraph only will help.
Oh, absolutely.
I hope so.
Absolutely, because they're forced to set up their thoughts.
Right.
So this kind of brings me to the resources section. I did send you this presentation, so you have these links.
Okay.
One of them is Campus Compact, and then the other is the National Writing Project. Both of those have all kinds of little assignments you might could do. If I'm not mistaken, this one has more of that.
Click. Can we look at it?
Yeah. Here we go. You've got little articles. There's
Other sources.
Yeah, other web resources, things of that nature. It seems like
there's to the side. I see those little hyperlinks.
Maybe there was something here. Read, Write, Think partnership between International Reading Association. A lot of this is just links to other places that you can go and get those things. I want to say
Read, Write, Think in Surrey County, where I used to teach.
Mm-hmm.
That was what we were taught to use when we did writing.
It shows you some articles about things that other students have done that you might want to do with them. I particularly like some of these creative things because in your particular scenario, they would have to figure out how to create it themselves and then therefore have the ability possibly to discern it from someone else who had written something. And it takes it back to the scenario about the journals as well. So that was one of them.
Do you do journal? I do reflective journals that are personal in class, but they're tied to text or to quotes. And I had someone tell me you don't need to do that with your AP kids, but I really feel the need to because I feel like
I don't see why not.
I feel like they need to continue to write in a stream of consciousness.
Yes.
They need to write what they're thinking about the text. I want them to write that way. Because I feel like it'll help them to understand what they read better, even if it's simply the quote of the day.
Sure.
I want them to write about it, but I've been told that I don't need to do that, that they're beyond that, but I still feel as if it's important.
Well, in your particular scenario, I think you kind of have to, because they have to be able to discern how it made them feel, the overall effect of the text, before they can really analyze it, in my opinion.
The text as a whole.
Yes.
Exactly.
And there again, that one scenario back in the PowerPoint talked about how the journals from fourth graders all the way up through adult learners help them develop that ability to problem solve and communicate with their writing.
Yes.
So I would say it would be something that would be valuable. So honestly, there's so much with the National Writing Project and the Campus Compact thing that it's something I let you explore
Yeah,
on
got
your
it. You
own.
sent me my PowerPoint.
And then I also have, I don't have the Goldthwait book in here. I wish I remembered to get it out of the car. But I also have this book, the Teaching Adolescent Writers from my undergrad. You're welcome to look through that. I got some awesome things out of that, and they're pretty simply put. It's not a lot of textbook stuff. So I found that very valuable. So you're welcome to take that and find things in it. The rest of this is still kind of just books and things you can take a look at that would help you in that particular scenario. Any questions up to this point? Okay, so you will take a minute to explore if you get a chance. So if you would, on your piece of paper, just do this quick little exit ticket for me. Tell me what's one thing that you did not know until you saw this presentation. One thing that you gained from this presentation that you might use, and then what is one question that you think you might still have?